3, 2, and 1, and bing, we're live. Here we are. It is a Friday. We are the BetaSaaSers, the AutoGraders, the something or others. And Rose, we can see, so you can see your text, but not your audio at this time. Anyway, it'll probably take us a good few minutes to get warmed up here. I've just got my coffee. Yes. And then now I wonder if anybody got an agenda together, as you probably saw in my email yesterday.
Right.
I haven't, the thing on my mind is, the well-being of everybody in the world, particularly those who are trying to learn how to code, and the Sinatra Hangperson assignment, which we could look at today.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's 15,000 plus in the MOOC now, so I can, it's only slightly hyperbole when I say that.
Wow.
Here we go. Yeah, so week 1 and the homework 1 and the quiz are live. Yes, and so we've got. I see no. I guess, does anybody have any burning agenda items that they would like to have added to the official agenda?
I have an issue that's barely an agenda item, but we can dispose of it. I started using Hangouts for some of my own class meetings. I'm actually going to be moving away from it because our new system, Canvas, has something built in that may be a better option. But in doing so, it seemed fairly straightforward to create a permanent Hangout room.
Well, you can create long-running Hangouts. Yes. No audio from you at this time, Rose. I mean, we did have this like help desk hangout in the MOOC at one point, which was like supposed to be a general long-running hangout, although they're not without their problems in my memory.
Okay, and then so I just wanted, in my recollection, when I tried doing this a year or more ago, I had to create a date in advance, and it was in fact a long-running hangout. And this time when I did it, and I'm not sure, exactly where I was and all the options, I was just able to create a hangout, and I never had to answer and associate it with the date, and it just seems permanent, and I can come and go as I please.
Yeah. Well, and then that might be related to you were using G+, I think, in the past, which was where if you were creating a G+ event.
Yeah, that's the way. Well, that's where I created the long-running hangout, and I didn't need to do exactly that.
But you were using G+. You were using G+ again to create the hangout.
Again, I'm not sure sort of what path I went through.
No, okay.
A big part of that is for this one, for this other long hangout, I'm using my UTC account, which is all different kind of issues. That's why I never know whether it's the account thing or whether it's a change in Google.
Sure.
And I'm just mentioning it in case either you knew a little bit more, because it did seem to be a change from what I experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I think G+ has been evolving. We are not using it at all. I think the thing that I would recommend to you on that content is to avoid G+ where at all possible and just go direct to YouTube. Like, if I need to make an event that is like a hangout that I'm independent of anything, I use this link, youtube.com/mylivevents, which I'm never sure how to navigate there, but has always reliably created a hangout that I can use. I've never tried to keep using it for longer than a few hours. There's something about they can broadcast for 8 hours. I think they can. Sometimes after a while you come back to a hangout and it says, sorry, this hangout has ended, you can't go there. I would tend not to rely upon doing that, but yeah, your mileage may vary.
Okay, yeah, and that's fine. And the other issue is it may be that's sort of why I was asking. It may be that there's incompatibility with that I just was suggesting, and being able to record and other features, because.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you want to record it, it has to be a hangout on air.
Got it. And maybe that's incompatible with the thing that I would can't be permanent.
I think in principle it can be running for quite a long time, but it's like you start recording, and then it records, and then you stop recording, and then you cannot restart recording.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I turned your video off there because your audio is kind of breaking.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, cool. So I'll just put in there, Wilton, we've covered that first. This is from Richard, long running hangouts. Dun, 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 dun. Outside of G plus and AV, I always Sam always uses that. Yeah, so it seems like Rose is without audio, unfortunately. Rose, I don't know if you want to add agenda items just by mentioning them into the chat. So you say 10:45. Is in 45 minutes from now, Richard?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yep, I forgot. I thought I'm just here. Yeah, in
Well,
45
we're
minutes.
all over the world. We are legion.
Yeah.
Hmm. And Roseanne, I'm assuming that you can hear us. You might want to join in. I often find restarting the browser very handy. Often find that actually plugging my headphones in is one of the key things that prevents me from making progress. What was I going to say there? Oh yes. Well, that reminds me. Is one of the things that we were discussing last week. Is we were talking about the homework zero, and you were asking me things, Richard, like, oh, do you show people how to do this and how to do that? And it made me thought that perhaps you haven't yet seen the videos that we have in the MOOC, where I tell the MOOC students about Hangouts and about pairing in C9 and so on. So
Yeah, and uh, I have not seen some of those. Some of the ones that I had in my MOOC were outdated,
yeah,
so I'm not quite sure, the time that those
yeah,
filtered in. Um, but I mean, just off the top of my head, my recollection is I have not seen, and just tell me if you do that in your video, is the use of of the style that I decided to use for myself that I'm promulgating
yeah.
maybe inappropriately, where I started an IRB,
Yes, and
I
then
used the
load.
load command to load my code, I worked it out with test cases, and then edited and reloaded.
Yeah, I mean, I think the danger with the load command. I mean, no, I've used that. I hadn't put those in the videos. I did actually when I re-recorded the videos uh, just this week. I mentioned that as well. Although I'm now questioning whether I should have done. I think the problem with the loading thing is it's not you make a change to the code, but you're kind of reloading it. There
Yeah,
are corner cases where it can be dangerous, if you know what I
I
mean.
understand. Right. And I mean that Sam. That's part of the reason I'm bringing it up because I'm realizing is this thing that I figured out. I mean, sometimes you get people figuring things out, and it's like,
Right,
yeah,
right.
that works, but that's a bad idea. So why I'm bringing it up is to figure out is that a good model? Is there a better one,
Well,
etc.
I think if it's a short-term thing and you're testing a very little bit of code, then loading it in IRB not a problem. But if you're getting to the stage where you're loading it in IRB like that, I think ultimately if you're getting onto anything serious, you start using and you want the IRB environment, then you use the debugger in the way that I was showing
Got it.
last time.
Okay. So maybe, and I'll have to either think, unless it's something of interest. I will have to think how that works.
Hmm,
In other words, what's the workflow with the debugger? That to me actually sounds preferable.
yeah.
Um, and I just, I guess my one question is, so I'm in the debugger and I start the debugger on my code. When I need to make a change, am I just starting a whole new session?
Yeah, usually that's what I mean. The sequence that I'm generally using is one where you're trying out four, five, six, seven things. You get the bit of code to work that you want, having effectively validated it in the debugger, and then
Okay.
you put it back in to the actual code, and then you restart with the debugger to see if it now actually works. And then
Okay.
sometimes that necessitates another, couple of rounds on the
Okay, but I'm
debugger and
starting
playing.
fresh each time. It's interesting that the corner cases that you're talking about that could be problematic, I would think have to do with that I'm not like I'm loading into an old environment, so I could load and reload it and leave some trash around that may cause problems, and
Yes.
that also has a beneficial aspect because what I would do is I would load up IRB, just type out a few test cases and then load in my code, try it, and then as I change things, I could just up arrow and reuse my test cases
Yeah, but
in a sense.
Yes, I mean, I think that that's all going to work fine, potentially
But
for.
I can't do
But then there's
right.
still the fundamental problem that, of course, in Ruby, for
Yeah.
example, if you had a version of a class, right? Like I'll just do it here. Like say that you've got in your file, you've got a class and you've got a
Yeah.
class which we'll call
Yeah.
Richard, yeah, which has a method which is like sum on it or whatever, yeah, and that's it. That's in your file, and you're in
Yeah.
a, and then in IRB, you're in kind of a long running process, and
Yeah.
you one time you do loads, and you do like lib richard.rb, right, and you load it in. So then, and later on, you decide to delete this method,
Yeah. But it's still defined.
but
I
it's still
understand.
defined because yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're pulling in. What's difficult is when you're in a long running IRB and you're repeatedly doing load, then there can just be stuff hanging around which can catch you out. But I think there's no foolproof. All of the different approaches, there are things that will catch you out. I mean, I've got a video of myself and Michael working through, like a couple of hours on cucumber things with us catching ourselves out in different ways. It's I think that it's all you can show all of these different things and people I don't think there is a best way. It's about saying like, here's one thing you could do, or here's another, and then see what people adopt. Really.
Okay, and that's cool. And I just, for me, at the time that I was starting out,
Yeah.
I sort of foraged around for myself, and I was a little bit surprised that it's like, okay, here's not recommended, and this and that. And I sort of see what you're saying. Maybe there is none, but I still think, students especially, and even I can use like here's suggestion.
Oh,
And
totally.
what I didn't,
Suggestions.
I guess the thing that bugged me a lot is it seemed
Hmm.
like some people's default was, and even the demonstrations was like, okay, run it from the command line.
Yeah.
And that to me obviated like the whole benefit of working in an interpreted environment, at least from what I was used to. I wanted to be inside something where
Right.
I
Right.
could manipulate and test and try out code, and so that's where I was coming from. And the debugger, as you're saying, the debugger is sort of like an IRB equivalent in that respect, I would
Exactly.
think.
Although like the interesting thing is, so I mean, the main things that I've been working on, if we insert now, so the MOOC of it. So the week one is live, and for the MOOC, I think we finally got all of the bits sorted, and we've got the homework one and the quiz one are live, and oh, what was I going to say there? Oh, those Slack notifications has distracted me there from what I was going to say. Um, hmm. Oh yes, but so I'm just reviewing week two, and if we go and look at week two in the, has this got the, which is the right thing? I think it's the right thing. Yes. Week two, we can see it from here. We've got these pro tips from Aaron Patterson, who's a core Rails committer, and this is from I think Armando chatting to him a couple of times ago. He says he personally doesn't use a debugger, and he loves. I mean, there are a lot of
Hmm.
people who swear by the put statements. I think we had a thing the other day, which is like I'm a puts hacker or something. There was a blog post on. Oh, there we go. That was it. I'm a puts debuggerer. This is the one.
Hmm.
And I mean, personally, for me, I think you're just insane. Like because you have to like keep on like you have your like I have to think in advance of all the different things I can put, and then I run it once, I see stuff, and then I have to go, all right, here's these other 8 things I need to see. I'll type all those out, and then I'll rerun it again. Why not get into the actual debugger and just anyway? But everybody's
Okay,
different.
but presumably, if someone does this, he's addressing that issue in some way. No?
Well, no, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I
Okay.
think this is. I mean, I think that the advantage of this approach is that you've got and you end up with kind of like a written like this. Like look at this, right? The guy's got like lots of things being printed out, and that's what he wants.
Oh,
He's
that's
kind of,
all. Okay. So those are his put-s statements.
yeah, some of them, yeah,
I
and
mean,
he's like,
yeah.
yeah, and I think he's like sort of pointing out,
Or is he
various
printing
different.
out stack
Yeah, I
traces?
think he's printing out different stack traces.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but I think there is an advantage to this. I mean, this is kind of an old school, but it's also about um, being able to see the entire sequence. If you go into the actual debugger, then you kind of you don't get to see the like unfolding of time in quite the same way. And I think some people find the debugger quite confusing, and there are some situations where it's difficult to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it comes. I would come back to. And I guess I'm feeling this more and more. Having spent a long time, actually, I'll back up. Having spent a long time in my past, kind of leaping on particular bandwagons and saying, well, actually, well, of course, this is the way that it should be done, or this is the way it should be done. I think what I'm realizing is there is no right way to do it. What there is lots of different things which you can try out, and that you need to reflect on how well they've worked for you or not. So,
Well, not only for you and in the situation and environment you're in, because the
right.
thing that confuses me that I haven't done as much in my past is now working and debugging inside a framework in which you don't really understand a lot of it. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. In the past, even large systems that I was debugging, it's like, man, anywhere I wound up, that was still our system, and I needed to, go in and understand sort of the
Mm.
code and what was going on. And in like if I'm working in Rails, especially at our level, it's like, well, I need to have a sense of here's what I need to ignore, here's what's my code, etc.
Okay.
And that might lead to, I mean, I'm thinking that might lead to different tools and different styles of debugging in that situation.
Very possibly, yes. I mean, I think it's interesting because I mean, you can with the debugger, you can kind of go in and explore all of those the underlying code. And one of the things that's changed for me over the last couple of years is I've got more and more into the open source code that's kind of underlying what's going on.
Right. I mean, I guess that's an advantage, but also something that, I guess those people who are more experienced know sort of how to ignore things. And someone who's new to it, just like a staff,
absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, and that's the big thing. I think that, and I saw that in the bootcamp, and I see that in lots of places. Is that as an experienced individual, you can kind of which parts of the stack trace to ignore, and like which warnings to ignore and which ones are more serious and so on. And part of the thing is that I think it's just this process of the repeated experience allows you to get better at following those things, and there's probably no shortcuts, maybe.
Okay. But my takeaway message is to look at is having people invoke the sort of the interactive environment via a debugger command, and that would give me a way to introduce the debugger even sooner in the process.
Yes, it would. It would. I mean, another thing is, look, I absolutely love IRB. I don't tend to be loading my files into IRB. I mean, I did a long time ago. But just because I've been bitten by that a few times, and then
well, how do you get your stuff in there?
Well, I just write it out. Like the critical way that I use IRB, if I just find, for example, if we've got like here's a handy C9 environment that I happen to have. So I just run IRB, and then I'm thinking about, I've got to work out, how do I, what's the method where,
for sure. And that's a good point. It's like someone should know how to do that, and that resource, even independent of debugging anything in particular.
Yeah, even if just like if I'm thinking, it's just like sort of like a scratch pad in which you can call the methods on the, so if I'm solving, the Ruby intro homework, then doing these bits and pieces. I mean, I'm sure we can use the debugger, but it's kind of overkill because the setup is so simple.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Rose, is your mic working now, Rose?
Can you hear me?
Yes, it is.
Yes, we can. Hallelujah.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, finally. Oh, I'm wondering if I've got a loose wire or something in here. It's weird.
Well, I mean, we're not mental health professionals, but I'm sure that.
Thanks a lot, Sam.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I know. Cheap shot, but hey.
You're gonna laugh or you start crying. It's been a how has your week been, Rose?
Oh, well, I don't know. Very exhausting, but
Mm.
not so much from this standpoint. I've just got quite a bit going on with my livestock.
Mm.
It's that time of the year.
Right, right. Yes, exhausting. Yeah, well, it's very good to see you. For me, I've had a lot going on with my livestock, which is my three boys, and
Yeah.
not made as much progress in the week as I had hoped. But we're getting there. I think we'll get stuff. But also,
Right.
Armando is here. Hello, Armando.
Hey,
Oh,
sorry I'm
hey.
late. I had the wrong link.
No worries. Good to see you. We're just actually we haven't really managed to achieve very much in your absence. We have now got Rose connected with the audio, and Richard and I have put a few links in. But we were just going to work out what the agenda is. Do you have any agenda items, Armando?
Well, you brought up this issue with the new videos not yet correctly including the slides, although
right.
you and I can talk about that offline if you want.
Sure.
Other than that, I'm working on a new assignment with a colleague of mine in the Bay Area here who has actually been using parts of our course material for internal training.
Mm-hmm.
The name of the company escapes me, but I'll look it up. But he and I are going to try to develop a new TDD assignment that's sort of much more fascist about getting students to really write the test first.
Oh, okay.
And I haven't thought exactly about what that is yet, but I have a 2-week break coming up during which I hope to garbage collect and clear my head.
Good show. Yes, I really liked your blog post actually about the sort of Wolfian thing of thinking in TDD.
Yeah, it was a little off the wall, but I think if I can make an assignment like that where there's something scoreable about the assignment that requires you to basically write an assertion.
Yes, indeed.
And kind of build the assignment out that way. So I have to think about what that looks like and how it would be automatically gradable. But
yes,
by the way, guest blog posts are more than encouraged and welcome. It just seems like the number of people who are following what we're doing in some way, I kind of feel like they, I don't know, deserve more buzz than they're getting. So please write stuff. I think I can even add all of you as official collaborators, and then you can just blog whenever you want. I consider you all part of the SAS inner circle. So
good stuff.
It wouldn't even really be a guest post from you guys. 14 post.
I was going, Armando, I did put. What did I do? I put a draft blog post in. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh,
you saw my. There was that person who was like, there was somebody else's blog on pairing, and I was talking about it in the Slack, and then you said, "Oh, hey, that was good. That could be a blog." And
yes.
I haven't published it. I kind of copied it over, and so it's,
okay.
I'm trying to work out how I can see the other blogs here, but anyway, I'll put for those. There's a great offer there from Armando for everyone. There's a link to the blog is here in the notes, and we can get you set up if you want to do some blogging.
Yeah, please just send me your Google IDs and I'll add you.
Right, here we go. Let's. That was last week. Notes. That was also action items in there. So all send details to Armando about blog.
Cool.
Yes, I mean the interesting thing was there the thing about related to because you're checking for the test coverage. There was someone who was thinking that you could use the test coverage to indicate whether the you could have it so that the test coverage would have to be there, and the coverage would have to be 0, and then it would have to go up or something like that. Anyway, sorry, that's just.
Well, what we found is that, and I don't want to take away from whatever agenda you guys have in mind, but we keep trying semester after semester to get students to trust the process, and I feel like each semester we turn over one card, right? Like we got them to actually try pair programming. We got them to actually do pull requests equals code reviews. That was kind of our big achievement this past time. I think that the problem we've had with TDD is that I think I've decided that we can't use test coverage as the metric of whether they're doing TDD. We can use it as the metric of whether they're getting into the habit of writing tests, but we still get a lot of complaints that tests are really hard to write, and it's because they wrote the code first. So would you like me to just sort of read your blog post, say it looks great, and hit the publish button, or do you want me to do
It was you had suggested I do something, and it was like I didn't publish it just because, have I pulled out the right stuff that you were thinking was the good stuff, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, this is great. I might add one editorial comment where, your paragraph that says, I would say the key is follow the process. That was, I think 3 of the student teams used almost those exact words when I asked them what advice would you give to the next cohort of students. They said, I would tell them trust the process, even if it seems weird at first, because it actually works. So
yeah, it was what we said to all the people at the boot. What's funny is that people in the boot camp where they're paying you 10 grand because you supposedly know the process won't follow the process you're suggesting. I'm not sure what that's about, but anyway.
Are they more
So
inclined to
typical.
follow it because they're paying you a lot of money to tell them what it is?
I don't know. I mean, you would have thought that if they were paying you that amount of money, that would mean that they would have a higher level of trust in the fact that you knew what the right process was. But somehow that seems to be, I expect the MOOC students who are kind of getting it for free to say, oh yeah, I'm not sure if this is really a good idea. But a lot of the MOOC students, the boot camp students, were similarly skeptical, which I found surprising, given that they had already put their money where their mouth was going to be. Anyway.
What you're saying is even in the paid boot camp, it's a challenge to get people to really follow the process.
Absolutely. Yes.
Sure.
But yes, so I'm just quickly reviewing our outstanding objects as action items. I don't think so the Rose, the answer is yes. Dave's video was recorded, and I think
fantastic.
Working. That's all being put up somewhere, and Amanda will be getting that to us. So
which one are we talking about?
Dave's final video thing.
In fact, which of these little icons is the thing that lets me paste something into a message box? Because
it's the blue one at the top. I'll just say hi in the.
Yes, I found it.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, wonderful.
There we go. Yes, and I will add that.
Yeah, it was actually quite an event because 40 years worth of Dave's PhD students converged, and something like 10 of them gave talks about work that they've done with Dave. I gave one on all the stuff that that we've all done with the class and things like that. But it was quite an event. So.
Wonderful, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Other things done. Okay.
By the way, if you guys follow at SaaSbook on Twitter, I thought I tweeted that URL, but I may have screwed up the implementation of how I did that.
Or well, I may well have missed things happening on Twitter, but
Me too.
I kind of social media. That's well. I'll give my main updates for the MOOC. As I was just sort of saying before Amanda joined, is so week 1 is now fully live. The homework 1, which is now Ruby intro, we're starting everything numbering from 1. Is now all fully live, and I'm excited because now in this week 1 we've got everything finally split on all of the correct, the splits for the self checks are now all correct, and we also have full transcripts for everything in week 1. So that's. I've also re-recorded the sections for telling students how the MOOC setup works for pair programming, and also we just recorded our Ruby intro thing. So we've got an example here showing people how to do a bit of ping pong in Ruby there for the Ruby intro, and talking also about how to write your own tests and also how RSpec works and so on and so forth. So that's all up to date with the latest RSpec syntax. So I'm quite pleased that we've got all that sort of. Also, Armando, the quiz has been updated based on your comments from last time around and
cool,
and so forth. And I just wanted, maybe you saw it before. I also updated. Because the overview that you guys do for the Berkeley students doesn't make sense for the MOOC students. So I use your slides to record a specific overview for the MOOC students. So
cool.
Week 1 is looking good. I've just finished reviewing week 2. This is all looking pretty good here for week 2 for the rest of the Ruby material. Then we've got going into BDD and TDD, and so this is the first place where the RSpec syntax introduced is in any serious consequence. So what I've just done, a lot of the big strides forwards for me, is I've worked out how the edX video hosting works, which explains all sorts of strange things that have been happening to me in the past. But so what we've got here now is, so Amanda recorded new videos this spring. We have those videos, but as Amanda was alluding to, they don't have the slides mashed in. But so this morning, just for this one, because it's due on to come out on Tuesday, I just kind of like I did a simulated Demando where I. So what this does is I've taken the original video and I kind of recorded a video of the slides moving along as they do and tried to get the timings matched up with what happens in the video, and it sort of works. So what this the key thing here is it removes the reference to the old should syntax, and it also removes the reference to the Ruby calisthenics assignment, which is no longer in the MOOC. So I think that's a step in the right direction. But I guess how we will deal with the other videos, maybe we'll take that separately at the end, perhaps, Armando.
Yeah, I have a thought about that. I'll email you after the call, so I was about to take up everyone else's time here.
Cool. Okay. So we've then also got the is TDD dead debate is in there as well, and the quiz. Oh, go on.
I don't know to what extent people actually tend to watch these things, and although it's a good debate, it's long.
Yeah.
You could just since you have this great blog post, which I just published, you could point to the blog post and have the blog post point to
the videos,
the bonus video if people are interested. I watched it. I thought it was interesting, but it takes commitment.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I mean, there's a whole thing about links to videos, and if it's sort of in the sequence, I think it increases the chances that they watch them. Whether it's appropriate for everybody to watch at that point is another matter. It was, I guess, when it came out, it was sort of. It was like a late breaking kind of like
lightning rod when it came out, and now
it's now maybe there. So I'll just put maybe reduce TDD is dead to just links. But so the next thing coming up is the homework 2 Sinatra thing. So actually, it was what we did last week, Armando. We had sort of a mob programming session on the Ruby intro, which was kind of interesting. There was a lot of discussion about different things there. The thing I was just going to ask Richard is, you sent me a link to a Google document on that day, covering like was your tips about how to use the C9 environment and so on, and I now can't find that. And I wonder if you could possibly send that to me again.
Okay, and the only thing is that when I looked at it in detail, I wasn't as happy. It didn't have in it exactly what I thought, because I'm off.
No, but I think it was still a great resource. So if you can find it again, I would.
Will do.
I've got
and throw it in.
If you throw it in the chat here now, I'll make sure it actually gets into the meeting notes. I'm not sure. It was probably because we were doing this different mob programming setup yesterday. I think there was things flying left, right, and center. What I have done, I mean, I thought that was. We got lots of discussion last week. We didn't get as much programming done as I had hoped. I was kind of left in the state of like, wow, all these ideas. How should the homework 1 be updated? I didn't update it in any intense fashion, but I did just put through a few changes in the README in Ruby intro, where I've got these notes about how to specifically run just subsets of the tests.
Oh, good idea.
Related to the the individual bit that you're working on, and I've moved the mention of it was explicitly saying Autotest. I've moved the guard Autotest. I've had it include mention of guard, and I've just moved it down to the bottom so that I think what we've seen is that a lot of when it's at the top, I think students tend to think they have to do it, and then they get all stuck with Autotest and guard, which I think is confusing, for many students off the bat. But yeah, so I think that was all of the changes that I made there, based on a discussion last week. So what we could do now, I don't know if we had, is have a look at the Sinatra hang person assignment, unless there are any other agenda items that we should be looking at.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah, so I don't know if we have time for really a mob programming aspect of it. What I've just done in the MOOC itself is I've just added, so for Sinatra here, we've got the 2 components there. We've got this initial instruction here. We've got a question about whether they read chapter 2 of the textbook. I've changed this to say clone the GitHub repo rather than fork the GitHub repo, because I think that's probably we don't want people forking the repos. because I think actually cloning it probably reduces the chance that they'll push their own solution up into the cloud. But we've got the self-check questions and so on, and then I've added in another of the peer review pairing assignment elements.
Yeah, one thing that I was gonna at some point find time to talk to you about, Sam, is the self-check questions that are sort of sprinkled throughout the assignment. We had intended to at some point turn them into when you format questions in edX as peer graded questions, there's actually a special case of peer grading, which is essentially self-grading.
Right.
So the main difference is that the question is presented, the learner types their answer, and then rather than having someone else evaluate it, they are then shown what the rubric would have been. So there's still self-check, but it's a little bit more systematic.
Right.
I don't know if you think that there'd be value to doing that. I found that the tendency to simply sort of read over the answer and continue rather than answering the question is very high. So that would be something that if you wanted my summer interns to just go in there and make those changes, that seems like an easy thing that they could do.
Yes, it's that's an interesting idea. I'm going to add that into here. That's something to review. So we've got can self-check questions from Sinatra be moved into edX? Have a look at that.
It seems that anything that encourages them to do some active learning rather than passive learning would be a plus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, that's the motivation. In fact, although I haven't used it in this manner yet, the domain-specific language RUCL that we created for multiple choice questions now supports outputting questions that are intended for peer or self-check and that generate the correct edX XML stuff that can be pasted in.
All right.
Although I'd be happy to have my interns just do these by hand. I guess that's the other thing. I was hoping to stand up this site before I left for my vacation Sunday, but I guess it'll happen after. I had some students over the last 2 offerings of my Berkeley class build a site called Question Bank. That so over the N years that we've had this class, we've developed a huge bank of short answer and multiple choice questions. The question bank allows them to be tagged, organized by topic. You can mark what level in the Bloom taxonomy they address. You can create your own collections of questions, and then you can export things in a zillion formats to create quizzes or homework assignments or whatever you want. So I'm getting it stood up on it's stood up now. I just haven't populated it with all my old questions, but the hope is that this is something I wanted this group to kind of beta test and see if it's useful for your course offerings. So
sure.
So yeah, I'll just add a note for that. Then that's the question, to stand up the question bank system.
Yeah, and in fact, right now the access to it is via whitelist. So if you can if there's a spreadsheet somewhere that has all of your GitHub IDs, I'll make sure that you are on the whitelist as instructors who are allowed to use it, because it just uses GitHub SSO. But I want to keep it between ourselves until we've actually kicked the tires.
Sure.
So if you want access to this, send me your GitHub ID and make sure I have it somewhere. Or if there's a list here, I'll.
Yeah, I mean I can provide. There is
if all of you are in the organization.
Yeah, there's the organization on GitHub. I think it's got the list of.
Okay, so if you're in the org, I'll just get them from there.
Yeah, that'd be the way to go. Yes. So that's excellent. Going back to, I'm just sort of muxing in my brain the things about the Ruby intro and the Sinatra thing is, I think a big part of the discussion last week was about how we think it's sort of challenging for the students to bite off the RSpec components. I guess with the homework, the Ruby intro, I mean, I think your intention with that one, Armando, is that we're introducing a bit of RSpec on the sly, kind of to get them ready for the TDD that's coming up.
Right.
And I think that there's a concern that students kind of going into it, well, the difficulty I think with Berkeley and all the other universities, and then with the MOOC, is they're serving so many different levels of ability, and how to make that work. I think the particular thing that I worry about for students coming into the SaaS, the hang person thing, is this style that you adopt here, where I think it's still in there, where we have a lot of pending specs, and then we unpend them, if you know what I mean. And so there's kind of you can kind of end up in a situation where you're following through the instructions, and then suddenly the screen is kind of like filled with a whole huge load of all these failing things. I think is that's partly why I gone through it, ended up adding these individual things to be able to allow them to specify and run a much smaller subset of the elements. Does that make sense?
Yeah, although we're talking about two different. I think what you're saying is the Ruby intro has been augmented with a kinder, gentler intro to running individual sets of specs, so that when they hit the Hangman homework, it's not a shock to uncomment the line and see a bunch of tests suddenly fail. Is that?
Yes, I think I'm certainly introducing this thing in the hope that if they're running the specs, that they're able to sort of do it in a manageable chunk. The concern I have slightly for the MOOC is, well, it's a shame in some ways that they don't do Ruby calisthenics anymore. In as much as the Sinatra homework is interesting in that it's very different from the others. I think in terms of the length of, because it's got this part 0, which goes through this sequence of basically setting up kind of a vanilla Sinatra app and deploying it to Heroku. That's the first part, isn't it? That part 0.
Yep.
Yeah. And I don't know about in the course, but in the MOOC, that doing that homework actually comes before the SaaS architecture, where you see about the kind of web as a client server, the 3-tier model.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I'm trying to remember how those things were scheduled in the course, but I do think that the lecture material on SaaS architecture, it came sort of immediately before. It's like, the homework goes out the same day that lecture is given. And I think it was because our takeaway from the previous class was that even if students listen to the lecture, you can't really get it until you have actually touched the moving parts yourself. So we tried to put those things very close together.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, of course, in the MOOC, some people are just not going to watch anything anyway.
Is there any reason not to reorder things so that the homework Sinatra nominally comes after the presentation of those lectures?
Well, that's what I'm just thinking about. And the only thing is that we've got these kind of, like, these ones are here in order to introduce the RSpec, which is also going to be used in. I mean, the way that the MOOC used to be set up is we've got the intro, this little intro to RSpec, and then in the past you would have done Ruby calisthenics. So you would be using kind of slightly more sophisticated Ruby plus a bit more testing, and then it would have of course gone on to Rails. And the only thing is that by replacing the Ruby calisthenics with the Sinatra, we've just ended up introducing the this homework now.
So, I see what you're saying. If we go back to what Rose said, where any opportunity for the students to actually do some learning by doing instead of learning by trying to listen, I wouldn't be opposed to having both homeworks in there. I mean, for students who actually need the extra Ruby and RSpec practice, they may appreciate having the calisthenics, and for students who already know that stuff, it'll take them 10 minutes.
Right, and I just typed something in. Am I not muted now?
Has the same concern.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I started jumping in as we started transitioning to this, and I was talking, and then it was like no one was listening to me. I was muted. But exactly that is that I feel my students benefit from the extra practice. I take what we used to call homework 0 as just like not hard Ruby problems and stuff, but more with how to work with Cloud9, and then we give them some more interesting stuff with the calisthenics, and I still use it. I haven't yet adopted the Hangman, but I'm like uncomfortable just throwing out the calisthenics.
Like I said, I'm actually happy to keep both, right? And my view of the MOOC is that the course was created to serve instructors, and to the extent that the MOOC also serves other people, that's great. But I'd be perfectly happy to put it back in. I think the reason, by the way, the Berkeley students, I think they no longer do the Ruby calisthenics, and I don't yet know if that was a problem or not. I can tell you that they reacted very positively to the Hangman homework because it made them deploy an app so they knew the mechanics. It made them actually understand what an HTTP client-server workflow looks like, albeit in a trivial way. It made them have at least a passing experience with the concept of reaching out to a remote service for something. So it introduced a bunch of concepts that, at least for the projects, become very relevant. And I think, one of the things we survey at the end of the course is, how well do you feel you understand each of the following things? And in early versions of the course, a lot of students came away with, wow, Rails seems like magic. I don't think I really understand it.
Right.
The percentage of students who has said that since we introduced this assignment has dropped by like half.
Interesting.
So I think there is something about touching the workflow that then, then when they go to Rails, they say, oh, I see. It's all of the same concepts, but Rails actually gives me some additional machinery. And now it's not magic anymore because I've seen the unmagicked version in the form of Sinatra. So I guess I feel strongly that I want to have the assignment, but putting in calisthenics would be great. Sorry, go ahead, Rose. Sorry.
Oh no, don't be sorry. I just wanted to add that those points you're making, I think, are quite relevant. But I would actually, in the instructions, spell it out. Learning objective or purpose or something, and actually say that so they understand the goal that they're trying to reach. Because I think some of them go through groping in the dark and don't even understand why what they're doing next is important or is an important step. Another thing about the calisthenics is I don't require it as a homework anymore, but what I did early in the semester is when we finished certain things and we had some time, we would pick off one or more of the exercises and actually work them out in class. And I felt that was really helpful and effective, just to do it live. I mean, if it's possible, if in a given context, your class is small enough, et cetera, if it's possible. But I think really important is to spell out, because this is so new to so many of them, they have to constantly be reminded, this is what the point of this is.
Right. That's an excellent point, Rose. And one of the things I was hoping to get out last week that we didn't was about what the learning objectives for homework were.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you have to hammer away at them. You just have to hammer away at them again and again and again. And also the way that the in hangpersongame.rb, the way that the methods are broken up, I think it's important also to point out, I mean, they'll get to look at the spec, but for many of them, they look at the spec and it's all, what am I seeing here? Again, hammer out, this is what we're specifying, and this is how we're specifying it. Because the first time they look at this, it's not going to make any sense. And I know I had trouble the first time looking at this. Several people did that work with me, and then my students did, where, for instance, the guest letter will return false if, for instance, they give the same letter twice, or give something that isn't a letter, and it's true as long as it's a letter that hasn't been given before. And again, the point that the method does one thing. It's not supposed to give true or false based on whether the letter is right. It's supposed to give true or false based on whether the guess is valid. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, I think I'll just jump in there, Rose. And I think we were discussing this last year. I think there are some, there's some conceptual trickiness that's like from, the way the spec is expecting the system to behave. That if you don't quite get the spec, then it becomes quite tricky to get.
That's my point. That's my point. And I think in some cases, I know that normally we wouldn't want to have a lot of comments and words and blah, 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 let the spec determine it. But in order for students to start out and make this, we need, in some cases, a bridge to understanding how to read the spec, and then what the spec says is really what it means.
If only there was a higher level language that allowed us to write specs in English. I'm sure that would be a real hot selling thing. Yes, that's an excellent point, Rose. Armando, did you want to talk to that?
No, I think it's a great idea. I would be happy to sort of take it on myself to go through and try to do some retrofits. Rose, do you have like what will be useful? If can you give me like one example, and not live, like just send me an email about it, but pick one spec and then pick one example of what you think the sort of bridging material might read like, and I think that will let me get inside your head a little bit.
Yeah, and it could just be in the README.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking that that's probably 90% of the benefit can be obtained that way. But I think if you give me an example that shows where you're coming from,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
I would be happy to try to generalize that into examples that. And you're right. I mean, why don't we have learning objectives? A, B, and C at the beginning of each homework. That's like education 101.
Well, as far as the learning objectives, the list that you gave us. Why we're doing it. That's the list I want to see there. That's exactly the list.
Oh, you mean the one that?
No, I realized that I was saying it actually. It would be great if the students knew this too.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing. If we just go, we spend a moment on the Ruby intro homework. As I was, looking through. I mean, I did the full homework like 10 days ago, and I just sort of like, okay, these are all of the low-level Ruby things that we're sort of, that they need to kind of basically get in order to, pass these first few things. But so what I sort of was hoping to get to last week was an agreement of, is this the stuff that's the key objective? Is there also other objectives? Because it seems like, we've got this thing for like, these are the Ruby language things that are the objectives in this. But then there's also the presence of the, what is it called, of the RSpec. We're hoping for them to try and get aspects of testing or maybe possibly RSpec syntax out of this. And I don't know if this is something we can do together now. But similarly, I guess here for the hang person, it would be nice. Yeah, the same amount of.
Yeah, no, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
I will take it upon myself to do that because I feel like it's sort of my deficiency that it didn't get done clearly the first time. But you guys are right.
Okay, cool. Well, that's a simple.
I'll try to take a look at least Ruby intro. I'll try to take a look at Ruby intro, Ruby calisthenics, and Hangman at least as a start.
Sure. Well, and what I'll do is the thing I'm actually editing here is not the live one. Is I'm editing my fork, so I can send you a pull request with suggestions and what have you, and I guess we can all, if it's a pull request, then you can comment on things. Cool. Okay, that's great. Yeah, and then so hang person. Yeah, so we're getting set up with that. I think so. It's lovely. Yeah, I think the general agreement that Sinatra is valuable. The students seeing all the components of it is valuable. I would love to have calisthenics in here. We've kind of got this flow with the MOOC at the moment where we have like 1 week, one assignment, and so it's yeah.
Well, you're in the Army now. Nobody's paying you to dig a ditch. We could have 2 homeworks in a week.
Wow, this is the hardcore Armando Fox. We need to be permission to be hardcore.
Well, I have to say that increasingly I find that if you expect a lot of the students and you sort of come at the students in a way that says, I expect a lot of you, but it's only because I know that you're able to do it, they tend to really step up to the plate, and I think that they probably do appreciate the extra help. I took the calisthenics out of the Berkeley version because what we're finding is an increasing number of the Berkeley students are coming into the course having seen some Ruby before. That did not used to be the case. And it's actually because, ironically, there are 2 very successful student-led courses at Berkeley. We have this thing where a student, with the blessing of a faculty member, can essentially run a course all by themselves. Right. And the course bears credit and everything else. A very popular one, which is run by one of my former TAs, is just called Intro to Ruby on Rails. And it doesn't really talk about testing. It does a lot of things that pedagogically I wouldn't do, but I hold my nose a little bit because the students are getting exposed to the language and they're excited about it because of the things they can build. Right. So as more of the students are doing extracurriculars and coming in with some basic level of Ruby, I pulled the calisthenics assignment out of the course so that we'd have time for other things. But I'm all in favor of putting it back in.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would be, as well as it's great to ask the students to step up to the plate from the MOOC, there's also, the volunteers and the support and managing the week. And what I would almost be tempted to do is break these components into separate weeks so that this SaaS architecture and REST was standalone and that there was a Sinatra hang person assignment associated with it, and that there was the Ruby calisthenics associated here, and sort of break it up different. Anyway, I'll take that.
By the way, I think the way that we used to do it is that Ruby Calisthenics and Ruby Intro were kind of two parts of one homework. So nominally, that was the week 1 homework. So I think any way that we do it is fine, though.
Yeah. The Ruby Calisthenics, it needs to be upgraded to the new grader, but that's only another blog there. What I would just mention, actually, though, is I don't know if you've heard, Armando, of this technology called Middleman.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, which I think is so Middleman. It is a Ruby project, and it is basically, you could almost say that it's like a headless version of Rails. So it basically supports partials and all of the stuff to do with the kind of action view side of things.
Oh, so you can basically develop your front end without having a real server in place.
Yes, and so, for example,
Cool.
We've done this site here. This is our new Agile Ventures showcase, to showcase the different case studies for the different charities we've done stuff for, and this is all completely developed in Middleman, and so it has a compile step, and if we look at the, if I just go and find our repo for it, is in Agile Ventures, and it's the static website, and this is, I think, becoming a very popular solution. But so we have this like source directory here, and then you have all the usual JavaScript, HTML, and so on. But so you have I've got happens to be an ERB here, but you then have your layouts, like your layout ERB, and it's got like a yield in it and so on. And then
does it just pull data or data comes from static files or something?
Yeah, so we've got our data file here is in YAML, so this is the equivalent of our database. So you can see here.
Oh, this is great.
This is the different case studies there.
Oh my God! And so I have 2 interns who are building something, and this is going to save them like 70% of their time if they can do this.
Yeah, this is. I wanted to mention this to you because we've been having a lot of fun with it, and in particular because I remember when we were talking about bringing Sinatra in. I remember one of your concerns, Armando, was that Sinatra is like, well, in actually to stand it up and get the database and the template, get everything in there, you've actually got to do quite a lot of work, right. Which is also that's taken care of you for with Rails. But I think what's wonderful about Middleman is that basically you can get used to the layouts, the HTML, the CSS, and all of this stuff without having to worry about the model being any more complicated than I've lost it now, than just a file that's got read for. And it's a lovely way of splitting things up. In particular, when I look to the future project courses and so on, I think there's a lot of cases, as you say, like just for your interns there. Sometimes you don't need all of that power of Rails on the back end, and you can just do the static site, and you can actually prototype a lot faster.
Cool. I'm definitely going to point my interns at this. Thank you for the pointer.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think
it's also just useful for as you're developing your own app for prototyping the front end of it while the back end does not yet exist.
Yes. Well, and the other huge thing about it is you'll notice this site we've got here is hugely responsive. So what a lot of people do with Middleman is that you then would deploy it to GitHub Pages. So if I go back, so basically you can do rake publish. And then, so you can see here on the master branch, we've got GH Pages. This is now the static site, all compiled. So basically, unlike all of the Heroku apps, which take 7 seconds to load or you go offline or what have you, it's super blinding, lightning fast.
And then when you want to add data, you just modify the YAML files in place.
Yeah, exactly. And people can do pull requests into that, and it's all versioned and sorted and so on.
This is the way they're doing this app, I've decided.
Good stuff. Okay, well, I think we've hit the top of the hour, which is our usual time. We've had a nice chat. Is there anything else that we need to work out in a group?
Can I ask one last question?
Go on, Rose.
The stuff for September,
yes.
Is it all going to be cast in stone by early this summer? In other words, there's no plans for re-recording lectures, etc., etc. I'm just trying to figure out. Okay, yeah, so I can start putting my course together now.
Well, what I would say though, Rose, is Armando's not going to be recording any new lectures, but the issue that we have, what Armando has done is he did record new lectures in spring, which include all of the new updated RSpec stuff. So what I was just saying earlier is what we've just done is we've just inserted one video here for that, but there's now. Right. If you asked us for a spot from me now, you'd get that.
It would be,
You wouldn't yet get the updates for this week 5 TDD with RSpec. So basically, in the next, this is scheduled to be released to the MOOC students on July the 5th. If I can coordinate it with Armando and possibly his interns, we'll have all of that all completely updated for the new RSpec. So you might want to wait before that. What I'm hoping is by the end of the run of this MOOC, which is going to be, like ending midway through July, is we'll have a part one of the MOOC that is kind of fully up to date, so to speak.
Okay.
If RSpec introduce a new version of syntax over the summer, I'm going to absolutely go nuts with it.
Oh my God! Yeah, really.
But yeah, so
I swallowed hard on the current version because even though it required a lot of changes that seemed gratuitous, it has one beneficial side effect for a longer class, which is that it aligns the RSpec syntax with the Jasmine syntax. So it makes it easier when you present Jasmine. The syntax is now actually all the same. Yeah. And it's the same idiom where you say expect something and what you're passing is a lambda object that's a callable. So anyway,
no, that makes sense. It makes sense, and I think that the RSpec syntax is probably stable for a little while at least. Anyway, so there we go. And Richard, did you have a question?
No, I'm just impressed that I transitioned from the computer to my mobile, and I'm now in the car on my way to the dentist.
And we didn't even notice. Woo! My goodness, it really is the 21st century. Yeah. Good stuff. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's us for today. I'll just stop the